I first tried Nika Campbell's collection of short stories before realizing she's got a thing for historical fiction. Matter of fact, her debut, Thread of Gold Beads, and her latest novel is historical fiction, titled Saro. No, not the infamous Saro in Netflix, Anikulapo. This recently published book is rich in Yoruba history. On this episode of Worth Reading podcast, myself and Shay had an amazing 50 minutes or so to meet the author, film producer, and scriptwriter who is deeply fascinated by our history and retells them through fiction. Your guess is as good as mine. It was nothing short of an immersive experience.
Their identity was important, and this song is part of their identity. So it had to be infused into the story. There was no way I wasn't going to do that. They were so proud of their heritage. It was palpable in the house. You know, I mean, it was ingrained in my mind.
That's I remember.
I was proud of it.
Okay. Sing this.
For those of us that do not know it,
I mean, it's in my brain. It's ingrained. It can never go anywhere. Lórí òkè un pẹ̀tẹ́lẹ̀, níbẹ̀ la gbé bí mi o, níbẹ̀ la gbé tọ́ mi dàgbà o, ilẹ̀ òmìnira. Èmi ò fàbẹ́ òkúta ṣògo, ní ó dúró lórí Olúmọ, máa yọ̀ lórúkọ Ẹ̀gbá o, èmi ọmọ Lísàbí. Máa yọ̀ o, lórí Olúmọ, máa yọ̀ o, lórí Olúmọ.
Hey, you. Welcome to the What Reading Book podcast, the no boring zone where we get you all excited about books that are worth reading.
On the What Reading podcast, you get some unbiased take on books, juicy scoops of what runs through the minds of your favorite author. You can call us your virtual book connoisseurs that help you filter through the many books out there and let you know the ones worth reading.
On this podcast, we talk about different book genre. We do not discriminate, from fiction to non-fiction, poetry, biographies, memoirs, you name it, so long as it is written by an author of African descent and project our very own authentic African stories. You can count us in. So welcome on board and thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Hi everyone, good day to you. Good to have you on another episode of the Worth Reading podcast. And we have a very interesting guest here. You know, our book is one that I'm very, very biased about. I'm sure you get to know why much later. But Toby and I have Nika Campbell on today's show, and it's good to hear her and have her here. So, Nika, how are you doing today?
I am great. How are you, Shay? Toby, how are you guys?
I'm very well, thank you. Good
awesome.
to have you here.
Doing awesome. Good to have you here. And we'll just get on to it. Who's Nika Campbell very quickly?
Hey, what a question. No, how do I answer this? It's crazy. You know, I have many sides to me.
All sides.
Get the serious
side. All
it depends
sides.
on who you ask.
less of the serious though. All sides, less of the serious.
I'm serious. I'm crazy. I'm everything. So I'll balance it.
I like to hear the crazy part as well.
Oh no, you can't handle it.
Okay. As much as I can handle, as much as we can handle, let's hear it.
Yes.
So, who is Nika Campbell? Nika Campbell, well, she's a Yoruba girl at heart. She's from Nigeria. She'll always be Nigerian no matter where she is.
Okay.
Nika, I was born in Lviv, formerly called Lvov, Ukraine, which was part of the former Soviet Russian Republic.
Union. Yeah.
Yes, Soviet Union. And my parents were medical doctors there, students there where they met and got married. And then I was shipped home after about 3 months. And I basically grew up for a while with my grandparents while my parents finished their education in Russia. Oh, okay. So that's how I was very, very close to my grandparents. And I grew up for the first 20 years in Lagos, Nigeria. I attended 5 nursery and primary schools.
Wow. That's record-breaking.
That's quite a number.
Which is why I understand where anywhere I go, I can adjust because from a very young age, I was put in different environments so quickly. I had to adjust to my environment. So I've noticed that about myself. I can adjust quickly. I will study environments and I will adjust and I will go from there. So that's one thing about me. So I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria for the first 20 years. I attended Queen's College, Lagos, Nigeria. Yay.
You see why.
Yay.
And I started University of Lagos. I was there for a year and a half. I read economics and I transferred to
Okay.
Howard University. ASU did that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait any longer, so I had to transfer. And a lot of us
Absolutely.
actually did transfer abroad, unfortunately. Howard University was wonderful, a great experience, a Black experience. I was able to immerse myself in the Blackness
Black
of
culture.
America. And I know how Black Americans see themselves through the lens of American society and how they feel like they're second class citizens. And that was my first experience
With
in
racism.
America as a Black person, really, how they are marginalized and how they are discriminated against, and how it empowered me as it empowered a lot of Black students as well as to who we are and the power that we have as Black people. So I graduated from Howard University, and I went on to my master's in international development at American University. So I was a bookish person, but alongside everything I did, I always read. And I always remember the stories that my grandparents told me as a child growing up as to
Amazing.
who they were, the Egba people, how we traveled to Abeokuta. Those stayed with me for a long time. And the stories they told me, especially my grandmother told me, stayed with me. And that's how I self-published my first book, Thread of Gold Beads, which is historical fiction as well, about the Dahomey people and the Dahomey kingdom and how her great-great-grandmother came from that kingdom and how she fled during the Dahomey War. And so that inspired me. My reading inspired my writing. And that's who I am. I'm a writer. I'm a storyteller.
Amazing.
And through my stories, I try and tell those who have been marginalized, who have been forgotten, how stories have been misrepresented and to correct them as much as I can.
That's the serious side. What are the other sides?
The interior side, yeah, we're looking forward to that part, you know.
So just give us a mix of it. Just give us a mix of it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the serious parts, right?
Yeah, that's the
Great.
serious
The
part.
fun part is I love to travel.
Okay.
I love, because I think travel does a lot, even more than reading, traveling to the places, you never forget them. It's another way of educating yourself when you travel
How
to
many countries
places
have
that
you
you've never been
visited?
to.
Oh, you lost count. Wow.
Lost
Hey,
count.
goals.
I know, I've not. There's so many places I've never been to. But the most memorable for me so far is still Sierra Leone. I did my research of Saro there. I actually
2016,
visited
yeah.
there. Yeah, Freetown, Longi, those two places, Bonds Island. I visited all those places, and that's what really inspired me to write. I wrote after visiting Sierra Leone. I finished the first draft in 5 months.
Sarah Leah.
Because I just needed to pour it out, as in everything I'd experienced. So traveling is one thing I love to do. I love to hang out with my girlfriends. I like to party a bit, just have fun. That's what I like to do.
Right? Oh, good.
Yeah. We like the good life. We like the
Is
good
it
life.
the bloodline? God.
It's the
I
good
wish
life.
someone,
It's
a
the good
scientist
life.
was going to take time to do some research to find out like a scientific explanation to why do Ogun people, Abekuta, Ijebu, what is it about them and, you know, this soft life and partying.
Soft life.
You know, there's a way they get so happy and excited about just flames, gathering people together. And it's by default. I
Yes.
wonder why, you know?
I like to gather people together too. I like to connect people. Like if I have different groups of friends, by the way, because I can just, I'm very fluid. You know, I have the bookish people. I'll connect, like, oh, this person you might like this person. You have this idea. I have this friend who has, and I love connecting people. Like you guys can really connect and do some things together. I love
That sounds like me as well.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think it's worth studying, really. Perhaps there's something about the water
In the
there,
DNA.
or maybe something in the DNA that really accounts
It's true,
for
though.
that. Yeah, interesting, and it's a
true.
very great quality, if I do say so myself. You can almost distinguish an Egba person or an Ijebu person in any gadget. They're just so
wow.
overjoyed, extroverted, and, you know, like, Ariya, that's where you find them.
Yeah,
But it's all
very
good.
well, very well. Yeah, so
and it's true. I thought I'm actually introvert. I thought I was introverted, but even my sister was telling me that, Nika, you are not. I said, I was quite offended actually when she said that. I said, I'm not introverted. And then I started to look at myself. I'm like, actually, I'm not.
yeah, I think the beauty of the balancing act is having a mix of it all. So you have
Yeah,
your
Yeah.
introverted moments,
that's
and
true.
when you are
Yeah.
introverted, you are very introverted. The typical me is I like to get up in the morning and just have a very quiet start to the day. And then, so I have those moments, and then the times when I'm out, wow, I could be the life of a party.
Yeah. You know how
Let
to
me not
balance
give them your
things.
nickname,
So it's
Shay.
great
You just
quality.
leave that.
Yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
so good to hear all of that, and I think I hear you say how much Howard did to you in terms of just recognition of your place as a black person. Especially, I wonder what time that was. But I'm just curious. I've always been curious when I started to read the book and read the trajectory of the book. I just wondered what really made you pick up the pen to write this book. Was it after your trip to Sierra Leone, or you had actually decided to write the book before
Yeah.
then? And Sierra Leone was more of a deliberate trip to get a bit
Yes.
more context into the story.
Yeah.
And a bit of a
That's
follow up to Shay's question. Sorry to cut
uh-huh.
in. I'm just curious to know why it was historical fiction for you right from time. And I know you had written a collection of short story. Bury Me
Yes.
Comes Sunday Afternoon. I hope I got the title
Yes.
correctly.
You
And
got it
I'm
right.
just like, your debut was historical fiction, and then this one as well. What is it with you and history, and why do
And
you think it's so
historical.
important to use fiction as a
Remember,
vehicle to communicate history?
thank you for that. I'll start off with Shia, and then I'll come to what you
Yeah.
said. I always loved historical fiction because maybe it's because I grew up with my grandparents, and history was something that they always like. "Morotimba Timolo." I'm sorry for speaking Yoruba for those who don't
Yeah,
understand.
that's
I
fine.
remember when
What
I was
happened?
in in 1930. So I think
Yeah,
I grew up with this old. I'm like an old person, really. The
yeah,
way
you are
I
no more
I
Agba.
think because I was in the environment. So historical fiction came naturally
Naturally.
to me for some reason.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking back to why did this happen? There is a reason why. Maybe I need to go back and do a little bit of research to explain why this occurred. This didn't happen in a vacuum. I've always thought like that. Like there has to be a cause for this. It just didn't just happen. Even if it comes to people's behaviors, I'm like, this person can't just come out this evil. What happened to this person as a child? I mean, something must have
Something must
occurred.
have
Something
triggered
must
it, or
have
there must be,
changed. Something
yeah.
triggered this. That's how I've always been. And that always make me give people 1, 2, 3 chances. It's like, okay, there's a reason. Let me give this person another chance. I'm that empathetic to people for some reason. Maybe that has to do with how I grew up and my environment. But historical fiction came naturally to me because of my environment, of how my grandparents and my mom made me grow up, and my siblings as well. So that came naturally. So writing about Thread of Gold Beads and Sorrow, I didn't just wake up one morning and say, okay, I want to write historical fiction. I didn't even know that there was a genre called historical fiction when I started Thread of Gold Beads. I just knew I wanted to write this story. I wanted to write this story. I wanted to, first of all, research, and then I wanted to just write. Now, Sorrow happened and was triggered because my grandpa passed away. My maternal grandmother passed away first. But then after I wrote Thread of Gold Beads, my plan was like, let me also find out more about my grandpa's life and his ancestors. His family is the Coca family, whom this story is inspired
Okay.
by. And in my mind, I'm like, my grandpa is still going to be alive. I can always go back home and I'll ask him questions. He's always going to be there. He was always
always
this
time to do
silent,
it.
strong character in my life. But I think when my grandma passed before him, that kind of like broke him. Between a space of 1 year, he was also gone. And I was devastated. I mean, I was close to my grandma, but when my grandpa died, it was like something left me. My grandpa was basically the father I never really had because my parents were separated from when I was really young. So he was one that was my father model. He was everything that a man could be, a father could be to me. So when my grandmother passed, that was okay. I still had my mother as my mother. That's my model as a mother. But
Yeah.
when my grandpa passed, it was like my father was gone.
Father had gone.
And that did something to me. And I felt an urgency to write this story because I wanted a legacy of his to remain.
Okay.
So I regretted not having to speak more with him about his family, but thank God my mother was still there, and she had also heard the stories that he had told, and she had also experienced the life as an Igba person.
So she just
So
passed on the story to you.
passed on the story to me. I had she hand wrote what she remembered my grandpa and family members telling her, and then she handed me the family tree, which they had actually printed out.
Oh,
Which
interesting.
I have it right. It's like in my room, and then and I have the publications they did every few years. So all those things she handed to me, and then I had that urgency to write. It became really real, and I'm like, I need to write this now. And so it's a legacy to who my grandpa was really, and my family, and keeping it alive is how Sarah was inspired. And that's when I traveled to Sierra Leone. Don't make me cry. But
Okay.
that's
Thank you for
the real
sharing
reason.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I must say
Yeah.
it's quite a vulnerable one, and I know that strong emotions that we feel as humans sort of like inspire us to see the need to do certain things more urgently. And so I can totally relate to what you say. And then grief, all the strong emotions are
Yeah.
known to birth, key projects or key milestones in people's lives. So I can totally relate to that. But then I'm like, if I'm just imagining, just as a follow up to that question, like,
Yeah.
why was there such a huge gap between when your last book came out and this one? I mean, the shots, a lot of time, most writers will typically release like an anthology, just like they're trying to test the water and to see what the reception is going to be like. And then as a follow up to that, they will just, release a full length novel, right? And so after reading Bury Me Come Sunday Afternoon and the warm reception back, I think that must have been over, was it close to 10 years ago? And Kurama really
No,
did a lot of work to promote.
2016 was Bury Me Come Sunday.
Yes, it was
Yes.
2016.
6 years ago.
And they did quite a fantastic job at promoting it. It was literally everywhere on social media and all of that. And
I know.
an author to watch out for. And I didn't even know you had released the book before then, until maybe like
Yeah.
it was based on the success of your anthology that a lot of people found about your debut and all. And I'm like, okay, fingers crossed she releases something soon. And it was just like, whoa, she went viral. What happened between that period?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you can also seize the opportunity to share a bit of the challenges you experience while trying to, document this or put together this book. I know a lot of times because you rely heavily on history, there's a tendency need for one to be a bit more accurate. A lot of research would have to go.
Of course, the research, exactly.
You can just dive.
And that's part of my answer. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, 2016, Bury Me Come Sunday Afternoon came out, and what I did after that, most people might not know, is that I actually adapted 2 of the stories in Bury Me Come Sunday Afternoon into short films. So that was a project that I focused on, and that gap period is what I did during that time. So yes, it's actually on Amazon Prime, Apartment 24, which was Apartment 24, the very first story in Bury Me Come Sunday Afternoon.
Yes,
it was filmed in Virginia, and then what's the second one called? My Religion, Losing My Religion. That was filmed in Nigeria. Both came out between 2018 and 2019. I think Losing My Religion came out first, and then Apartment 24 came out second in 2019, 2020. And they were actually filmed in international films everywhere. So one was in Abuja. Apartment 24 was actually got an outstanding award for some reason in Abuja. And then they were all over the area. I think Losing My Religion was filmed in other places, in Egypt, other countries all over the world. So that was my project for a while. For about 2-3 years, I was working on adapting, going into, testing the
filmmaker and a script writer too.
I'm trying to get my feet wet in that area as well. So that's my other
for these 2
interest.
titles.
That's my other interest, yes. So Apartment 24, it's on Amazon Prime, and Losing My Religion, also on Amazon Prime. So those were the 2 things I was working on. And then I was doing my draft of Saru at the same time. So again, as we said, the research, which is historical fiction, it took a bit of time to be able to confirm the information and then start writing and then drafting and then editing and then finding a home for the book. So that's why it took that long with my short films and things that I'm working on as well. So, and of course, life. I'm raising 3 boys.
Wow.
That doesn't come easy,
beautiful.
really. Doesn't come easy. Doesn't.
That job will never end.
3 boys, 3 mountain movers. So
Yes.
that's
Amen.
a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll really look out to watch the titles you've mentioned. One thing I always find very interesting is when I see books that make it to screenplay. I always look out for them because it's a different feeling when you see what you've read in text come alive in motion picture. A lot of the Western world have done a good job of converting many very good books into screenplay. And I think that in
Yeah.
Nigeria we're playing a lot of catch up. But I know that there's a lot of work that is ongoing, and many of these stories are now being told. There was a time when the likes of Tunde Kilani were doing work with Akinwumi Shola's texts, with Sharo Rede and all of the movies that in fact I didn't even know that those movies were from books until when I had to read up a bit on Akinwumi Shola, and I realized that really some of these amazing movies were actually from text written by this great man. So well done
The
on that.
best films come from books. I think the best films come from books.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
I mean,
There's something different about them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the depth of it, but I'm like, when I watch a movie and then I didn't realize that it was a book before. And then at the end, in the credits, I see, I'm like, oh my God, that's
Based
the reason.
on-
that explains
It was a book.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
I think
I
an
agree.
easy explanation for that is that for a movie, you definitely the script writers will take time to write the script and all of that. But when they start out with a book, it gives them a lot more space to imagine things into. So the first work, the groundwork has been done. There's
It's
a
already
story
been done. Yes, that's right.
There's a story already, and all they are doing is modifications of that story,
That's
and
right.
just adding bits and pieces to make it a glamorous or more detailed or whatever direction they choose to take the story into. But it's always something to look out for. Whenever I see a book that makes it to screenplay, I'm always very pumped that great, especially if it's even an African story or an African movie. And although there are some that have come out underwhelming, but nonetheless, it's still kudos.
Yeah, it's always a hit
kudos
or
to-
miss. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
still kudos to whoever to those that
Yeah.
work on it. So in the light of that, just diving into the book, there are 2 things I'm going to ask you. First is, pardon me, but I think I missed out on some of the pronunciation of the names.
Okay.
Because they weren't written properly, but I kept struggling. I was looking for the other armies on them, right? I was looking for the other armies on them, like
Uh-huh.
To get
is
the
it
the
Dotunu,
accents on them, right?
Shiwolu,
Dotunu.
Shomide. I think those are the ones that I think it was Dotunu, then
Dotunu.
Okay, so it's
Osholu.
Dotunu.
Yes.
Exactly. I got Osholu.
Osholu.
The king's name.
Shiwolu.
Exactly, Shiwolu.
I
Okay,
think
so
Miss
that means I
Sumonu.
got it. But I just need to be sure that Sumonu, Oriade, Alade, those ones.
Leave Simone. I don't like Simonu. I don't even know why you're even bringing his name up. Let's call him away. He's like, of no
And
substance.
Sumoni in real life means, it's a good way to yab someone in Yoruba. Sumoni. I kind of could relate to that maybe it's just the way
I wouldn't be defending you when this gets out and the Sumonos out there hear what you just said. Yeah, so I think that before I dive into my questions from some of the characters in the book, there's something that you did that in the book that really gave me goosebumps. I already told Toby before now, and I would like you to. I saw that you put the Egba anthem. Do you want to sing it for us?
Okay.
Can you imagine?
Yes.
Do you know that?
I grew up with that song around me.
Do you
I
know
mean,
that
my
when I
grandparents.
saw that anthem, I went on
Oh,
YouTube.
wow.
I went on YouTube and I started playing. I looked up people that had produced the anthem, and I was just playing it and just enjoying
Yeah.
enjoying the lyrics of it. So, um, are there any lines of it that you're able to sing, or just able to? And why did you really infuse it into the book?
There was absolutely no way I wasn't going to infuse that. It was basically the essence of the story. I mean, we're talking about the Egba people and how they fled the Oyo Empire and how they were building a new kingdom for
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah.
So they had to. Their identity was important, and this song is part of their identity. So it had to be
Mm-hmm.
infused into the story. There was no way
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to do that. And I mean, growing up, when my grandparents took us to Abeokuta, or they had their family meetings at the house, they would always, when they started their meetings, they would start with the song. So it was already
Wow.
ingrained in my mind.
Did they, did,
There
did they
was
sing all? Did they sing all the stanzas?
Yes, they had a book now. It was a
Are you
serious
Really?
matter in my
serious?
family home. I'm telling
Wow.
you, my grandparents, they were so proud of their heritage. It was like, it was palpable in the house. You know, I mean, I felt so proud to actually have be part Egba, because they would, it was just a wonderful feeling. It was a wonderful experience. So that song, they will sing it. Some of them knew it off head. Some of them have the printouts. They will sing the whole stanzas, everything. They will sing it. Me, I only remember the one stanza that was ingrained in my
That
mind. But
stanza I
I was
remember.
proud of
Okay,
it.
Please,
okay. So
can you
sing,
sing
sing the
it?
sing the
For
stanza
those of
that,
us that do
that
not
you
know
remember.
Egba
See what,
anthem.
Seyi? Do you remember the page that it was in?
Just give me a second. Let me look out for
I
it.
can sing the first, no problem. I mean, it's in my brain. It's ingrained. It can never go anywhere. Let me
Yes,
find it.
that's page 30.
Aha.
Yeah.
You can join me if you want.
I'll hum
Ooh,
in my mind
okay.
with you, but I can only sing the chorus with you, anyways. But
Okay, I
Okay,
know the
I'll
song
sing.
now. It's quite popular. While
It's
growing
very
up, I used
popular.
to listen to Gateway
Yes.
FM, Mayo,
Aha.
Mayo,
the chorus is
Mayo,
popular,
That's
right?
it.
The chorus
Lumo.
is popular.
My head is
Yeah.
there. Please, give me some
It's okay.
credit.
I'll sing the first. Okay. 1, 2. Lórí òkè òun pẹ̀tẹ́lẹ̀, níbẹ̀ la gbé bí mi o, níbẹ̀ la gbé tọ́ mi dàgbà o, ilẹ̀ òmìnira. Èmi ò fàbẹ́ òkúta ṣògo, ní ó dúró lórí Olúmọ, máa yọ̀ lórúkọ Ẹ̀gbá o, èmi ọmọ Lísàbí. Máa yọ̀, máa yọ̀, máa yọ̀ o, lórí Olúmọ, máa yọ̀, máa yọ̀, máa yọ̀ o, lórí Olúmọ. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay.
That was beautiful.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, Toby. Thank you. You know. So yeah, that was that. I think that if there was any highlight for me in the book, seeing that anthem there, it just made me run to try to listen to it again. My dad used to sing it quite often when we're growing.
Wow.
But you know that because there are a lot of variations of songs that the Egba people sing. So in church
Yeah.
they sing songs like Egbalo ni Jesu, and and this is another variation to it,
Yeah.
and that was very good. And one thing that struck me about Saru is the role that Sierra Leone played in the whole slave trade movement. And I know that a
Yeah.
lot of people do not. I also like that you did not call it Sierra Leone like we know it today. You
Yes.
called, you named it, the real origin name Sierra Leone, right? Which
Sierra
is like,
Leone.
yeah, Mountain of Lions. And so I think that whenever you remember stories about the slave trade, what do you think about? Because even I've seen movies, growing up, we watched this movie that had Kunta Kunte. I can't remember what the title of the movie is anymore. We watched
Roots.
movies, yeah,
Roots,
exactly,
yeah.
Roots. Movies like
Roots.
that.
Yeah.
And
Alex.
then we've read
Really.
all sorts of stories, and
Yeah.
reading this book again, I see the level of inhumanity that occurred. I saw how brutish or brutal man was to man. And I know that there are
Yeah.
still some places where it may not be full blown, punch in your face racism or slavery or slave trade, but there's still
Subtle
subtle,
racism.
these things still occur very subtly in some parts of the world. So, what's your general take on the slave trade and all of that? What you've come to learn about it and the impact it had on our peoples?
One thing that is hard to swallow, which a lot of us will have to swallow, is that slave trade wasn't one-sided. And fine, we talk about the white man colonizers coming in and taking slaves, but it wouldn't have happened without participation of our people as well.
Yeah,
The ones
Sure.
that sold people off, the one that
Somanos,
kidnapped their own fellow human
Oriades,
beings,
and the
their
Somanos,
neighbors, the Oriades, the
trusted
Sumonos,
allies.
trusted people that turn and betray you. That is hard to swallow. And that's one thing I went in my research, even in all these other stories that we've heard all over, we've watched and we've read about, it's people that are close to us that betray us.
Yeah,
And the white man, the colonizer, saw this gap and they came in and they swooped in. And that continues to happen even now. We don't call it slavery now, we don't call it any of that, but we do have human trafficking. Nobody talks about it.
Of course.
It's still slavery, and it's still going on. It's going on underground. Even the person walking past you now might be trafficked right now. You don't know it. They tell us all the time, look out for signs that someone is being trafficked. It is scary, but it is happening. We just have to be vigilant and observant around us as to what's going on. So slavery, it's inhumane, but the real fact of the matter is that it doesn't exist if we don't allow it to exist. And that's why it is what it is. It's such a horrible thing to happen to man, but it happened and it's still happening. But something has to happen to change, to occur. And it's up to us as human beings to do that.
Yeah. While you were uncovering all those facts and history, did you feel hunger at some point? Like hunger, and how were you
Yeah.
able to interpret or translate those emotions into making sure that you did justice to the history without
Yeah.
discoloring it, without being
Yeah.
jaundiced about your perspective about it? And of
Yeah.
course, all of those things you found out, do you think they also have a role to play in the current issues around racism that we face in this age and time? You talked about a bit of your background, or growing up in the US as a black, an African American, and all of that. Like, did it provide some kind of perspective, and how did all of those emotions or anger influence your
Yeah.
perception or take when it comes to racism and all the happenstances in this current age and time?
Awesome. That's a great question. My emotions they oscillated a lot. I was extremely angry. Again, I couldn't really comprehend. And same when I watch all these movies about slavery, 12 Years a Slave, Roots,
Yeah.
you're just so incensed with anger. Like, how can this is someone that looks like, fine, our skin color is different, but we're really the same people. We're we're Homo sapiens, we're not animals. Why are you treating one race like an animal? We're all the same. What's going on? But I try to look at things in perspective. I looked at it in terms of me being the one that's enslaved, me being the one that's the enslaver. I try to be as objective as possible. They are looking at it in terms of economics. We need money, we need slaves. The slave is looking at it like, why is this happening to me? So what I did and what I hope I did was that I started with the mind, because slavery also is not just about a physical enslavement, it's also a mental enslavement. So when Dotunu and Shiwolu were captured, I turned to Dotunu and tried to look inwards into her mind, how she thought. I think it was chapter 6 or chapter 5, part 2 of Dotunu's section, part 2, where I started off with what was going on in Dotunu's mind when she realized that she had been captured as a slave.
Yeah.
And so she actually took a deep dive into hell. Her mind went to hell. And
Yeah,
some people might have even gone mental at that point where she's pregnant. She doesn't know where she's captive in a slave ship somewhere in the bowels of the ship. She doesn't know where her husband is. She doesn't know where her first child is. She doesn't know where her ward is. She feels betrayed and she begins to question, why me? And oftentimes, that's what we ask ourselves when we're in issues or in situations where we never imagined we would be. Father God, why me? Why me?
yeah.
Of
Why
all
me?
people, I've done everything I could to avoid this situation. Why am
Yeah,
I in this predicament? And so I try to approach it from an individual point of view because we're all individuals and that's the way we
Yeah.
experience things as individuals. So, and that's why how I try to break down the emotions by looking at it from each person's point of view. The way Shiolu approached what happened to him was different from the way Dotunu, his wife, approached it. She refused to accept what happened to her. Shiolu accepted it because of their different experiences. He was running away from something. She wanted to go
yeah,
back to everything that she loved. So it was
yeah.
looking at things from, and that clashed later on in their lives where they didn't want the same things anymore. And that was the conflict between them all the time. So I hope I was able to do that when I
Yeah,
wrote it
talking
out.
about them not wanting the same things anymore. It's quite interesting how you. In fact, the name sort of even typifies what he eventually did. How he waltzed into our hearts and our
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
Was that
Doesn't that
deliberate?
happen sometimes? Yeah. The opportunities when you leave a gap. So yeah.
So
Yeah.
a waltzed into
A
into
waltz
our,
waltzed into her life, into their lives.
yeah.
Interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
interesting. I think one thing that of all the characters, one character that struck me the most was Uwerola, and I like how it reminds us of the roles that women actually played in keeping kingdoms.
Oh yeah.
Forts and keeping kingdoms. We talk about we say a lot about the strengths of the women. We talk about Queen Amina, we talk about Moremi, and I think that in our own rights in the book, she sort of just took that kind of place where. Yes, our husband had been murdered, poisoned and killed.
Yeah.
Our son was nowhere. But thankfully, the oracle had said that he was still alive. Hence,
Yes.
there was no point, installing a new king. But beyond that, beyond what the oracle said, there had to be someone that would be there to, uphold that decision or that declaration and just
Yes.
hold things in hand is almost it reminds me of some movies that I've watched where people are keep telling you that they are looking out for the occurrence of something, and that was what it was almost as though she was waiting. That was what she was waiting for people to.
Yes.
And so I think that that's one character that I so much as much as we didn't get to hear so much about her, but the times that she was spoken about or the times that you narrated part of the story, it just
Yeah.
showed a very very strong woman.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I feel that I think it's because of the women that I grew up seeing all the time. They're strong women, silent and strong. They didn't
Okay.
need to showcase or shout who they were or do you know who I am kind of thing. They were
Yeah.
silent but strong. And they influenced their family members all the time and upheld the family. And that's what I wanted Wuraola to represent in the book as well. And
I
me,
could.
really, all the supporting roles that were in there, they were really strong women. Oshuntari was another one,
Yeah,
silent but
yeah.
strong.
I was going to
Yeah,
talk about her. I was going to talk about there's something you did there, right? I think how you introduce traditional religion, which is what I don't know why. Well, there was a bit of a cult face to it, sort of. But I wanted to believe that it was more geared towards traditional religion,
of
and
course.
how there was a sort of clash where, yeah, they've been brought up the sheep and were being introduced to Christianity, but Oshuntade still will take some of those women, and I think that I'm a Christian, right? And many times I get to just read a lot about what religion was for the black man before colonization,
Yeah,
before these religions were introduced to us. And my father will tell me that sometimes it's not all a case of black or white. right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of traditional religion was also born out of man's curiosity at that time, because
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
vacuum in every man, and
Exactly.
all that we seek to do is to fill that vacuum with a higher source of reckoning. You know, that
Yeah.
higher source where we say that I know that this higher source can protect me. I know that
The
this higher source is
supernatural,
looking out
right?
for me. I know that this higher source will be there to provide for me. So, do you want to talk about, that, how you were able to just introduce, and why do you think you that in? For instance, I know that even the Egbas, when Christianity came into the Egba land, I know that even the African church, as it is known, for instance, is largely
Mm-hmm.
more even an Egba church than anything. So yeah,
Um, Imagine if I had written this story and they were all Christians from the beginning. Would you have believed the story?
Of
no
course
Would you
way,
not.
have believed? Would I, if I started with Shiwolu was the king of the bar and they went to church?
no way, no
Of course
way.
not.
I had to be historically correct and authentic.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
makes sense.
there was and that was would be an affront and a slap in the face of the readers if I wasn't true to the time
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
to everything that was going on in that period of time. And at that time, I'm a Christian too, born again Christian by the way. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't represent the truth about that period in the 1830s to the 1850s. They were not Christians. A lot of them were not Christians. Christianity was just being introduced at the time. And there were so many people who were still traditional worshippers of
Okay.
Ifa, of Shango, of so
Yeah.
many other gods and
Yeah.
goddesses. And now I
Oh
had
yeah.
to,
For
there were
sure.
people who stayed true to that. There were people who converted, like Shiwolu, but then there were some who were lying that they were Christians, but they were undercover still worshippers of the traditional religions. And there are people still like that in our lives. I basically kind of represented people who are true to who they are and those who are not.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to also bring out in the book, authenticity of people and how people hide under different guises to be accepted. And
Yeah.
that's what I
But
wanted to do as
I think
well.
talking about authenticity, I know that the Egbas, as they know it, or as they've come to know, as they were then, and still are largely a mix of, there's still elements of traditional religion, as much as much as Christians and Muslims and all of that. So yeah, very true. We can't run away from that part of their
Yeah,
lives, and the best we can do is to tell it as it is.
as it
So
is. Yeah.
that was a very good one.
Thank you.
Amazing. So I'm actually very curious to know what your biggest influences are when it comes to writing. Is there any historical fiction author that you greatly admire that you feel that is our work, or any writer at all that has sort of like rubbed off in your
Yeah.
writing?
Funny enough, I watch more historical films than I read.
Hmm.
That's one thing. I would rather, and I'm a lover of film. I mean, I can watch movies
Okay.
all day long. It's just something
Yeah.
I love to do. So I am more attracted to historical movies. I can watch them from morning to night, and I'm like,
Mm.
beautiful. And I enjoy them so much. But in terms of writers, African writers are my favorite. Sefiata,
Yeah, I love
she's just,
her.
I like the way she's very sarcastic in her writing sometimes. I love the way she
Oh
just
my
comes across
goodness.
her characters.
And she's like that in
And
person
she,
too. Like,
I just love it.
yeah.
I just love it. I mean,
Oh,
we've not met in person, but we
yeah.
communicate by emails, and I just love
Yeah.
the way she writes. Chimamanda also, I love the way she writes as well. Historically, I love her historical Half of a Yellow Sun. I
Yeah.
love that book.
Yeah.
I love the way it's told. I love the characters. I love the way it comes across, and I love that many people are able to watch it worldwide as well to tell the stories
Mm.
of Biafra and the impact of it as well. Wolo Shinka is another one. I read him as a student growing up. He's always been one of the ones I read as well. I mean, those are the ones I really enjoy reading as well. But yeah, films and those books. African writers. I rarely read any other writers. Tayari Jones
Really?
is one. The American Marriage.
Yeah,
I love
American Marriage
American
was
Marriage.
beautiful. It
Um,
was.
oh, I love it.
Yeah, amazing book.
I really enjoyed that one as well. So a few African American writers as well. Those are the ones I
Yeah,
read.
I'm for African
Yeah.
writers. I'm pro Sefiata.
Shout out
Everything
to
Good Will
them.
Come is the best book I ever read for a long time.
Yeah,
She is really
and the
shameless
Beat
to
Collector.
bust up
The Beat
this book
Collector
for
is
that
our
book.
most. Yeah, the
Yeah,
Beat
it's
Collector. I think that's our
amazing.
most recent one. Lovely book
I
as
have
well.
it.
Lovely.
I
Yeah.
haven't read it, but I'm sure I'll read
Lovely.
it.
Yes,
Yeah.
you'll enjoy
I
it.
have yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Okay,
Are you looking yeah, sure you go on.
yeah, I think that when you talked about Ireti, uh, I'm curious, right, as to who inspired that character or what inspired that character.
Yeah.
I know that it doesn't have to be. It just have been a case of while we're
Yeah.
writing the story, it just thought to
Wild
introduce it.
imagination.
But because one
Let
of
me
the reasons
tell
why
you.
I asked is because there's a part that you never talked about, or I don't
Yeah.
think she ever talked about, which is what she saw that night. The the only reference to it was when
No spoilers.
Oriade was reminiscing on what happened, and he mentioned behind so person's house, Sigmund, blah blah blah, and that was the only clue I had that that must have been what she saw that terrified her, and she couldn't say anything about it. You don't need to prove me right, anyways, but why
Let me talk
Ireti?
let me talk to what Ireti represents.
Yeah,
Because she was dumb. She communicated with her hands. And at
yeah.
that time, sign language wasn't
No, it wasn't a
even
thing.
known in Africa. It was only later when she moved to Sierra Leone that
Yeah,
she was taught. But she represented the things that we as human beings do not see if we're not observant enough. But she was observant because she didn't have her mouth to speak. Her other senses were more acute.
yeah,
So she was able to pause and be more intentional about every other thing around her. And a lot of times, as human beings, we're always busy, we're always moving, we're always in a rush. We don't notice things that we really should be noticing.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Ireti represented for me something that we all really should pause and be more aware of in our lives, and that is being able to pause and to really see. And
Yeah.
she did that, and she represented that for me in the
Standing
book.
still and
And,
knowing.
yeah, and initially she wasn't actually part of my plan as a character. She just appeared. I'm really serious about that. I'm completely serious. My plan was okay, fine, a king, a queen, and a child. And then I started writing. I'm like, hold on, they have a child. There has to be someone who watches him. But hey,
Yeah.
Ireti didn't just appear out of nowhere. Ireti was a circumstance of the wars that were waging at that
Yeah.
time and how she was a refugee. And there were things that she saw that no one should ever see as a child, no one should ever experience as a child. So she came out with wounds already. She was someone who
Yeah.
was raw and who was aware of that bad things happen and we need to be more aware. So she had that sensitivity that even Shiwolu and Dotunu didn't have because they had not experienced the horrors of war. And she was basically a signal to them. She was kind of like a warning signal, someone who was making them aware, but still they couldn't really see what she was telling them. They couldn't really understand, but she was aware. And so there are things in our lives that are like signals to us. But since we've never experienced it before, how do we know? How do we know when we've never experienced it before? But there is always a sign somewhere. We just need to pause and be more observant and listen. And Iriti represented that. Yeah.
Interesting. That's quite immersive. I think finally for me, right? One grouse that I have, I call it the grouse. It's a lesson actually, but it's just a grouse. So I'm one of those people that believes so much in friendship, right? I believe so much in friendship to the point of blind trust.
Yeah.
Not because
Yeah.
I'm not because I'm unaware, that man can be inhuman to man, not because I'm aware that people stab people in the back, but despite all of these, realizations, I still believe in just trusting,
Yeah.
and giving loyalty, getting loyalty in return, and just living that life. But seeing how a trusted friend, so it wasn't just it was someone that you knew from many
From
years back,
childhood. Yeah.
could
Yeah.
do such. I don't
Yeah.
think there's anything more evil than selling another man into slavery, right?
Yeah.
Seeing that
Yeah.
someone of that nature can do that to another man. I was going to ask. So that's my grouse, anyways. I didn't like that you made me remember that man self can be very evil, though.
Oh yes.
But but anyways, what do you really? What's your take on blind trust, loyalty, and friendship in general? Because that's something
I mean, I think
subtle that people may miss out in the book.
yeah. Um, what's friendship without trust? If you can't trust a friend, then who is that really to you? And that's the risk we take as human
Yeah,
beings.
yeah,
You have
yeah.
to take that risk,
Mm-hmm.
or else you will always be isolated and you will always be alone. So as much as people will be like, "Oh no, I can't trust anymore. I've been burned. I've been, this person did me bad." Fine, I understand that. I understand. Now you know that person. Now you set your boundaries. But is that how you're going to live all your life? I'm not saying have blind trust, but trust to an extent.
Yeah,
And then as you go on in that relationship, the levels will change. If you trust someone a little bit, maybe you give them even a bit more opportunity to come into your life. But blind trust, no, but trust, yes. That's how I see things because you have to risk something to get something.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to add that trust is earned. You don't just bestow it on people. That
No.
over time, people tend, it's like something that you actually accrue based on proof, evidence. And so blind
Yeah.
trust, I'm not such a party to, but I
Not
think
blind
that
trust. Yeah.
there's this thing they say in Yoruba, téèyàn bá gbàgbé iṣẹ́ àná ànírẹ́ni bá ṣeré. I don't know if I got that correctly. The context like, oh, people would mess up, people would
Yeah.
disappoint you, but there's also a
Yeah.
place of forgiveness. There's also a place of giving people the benefit of the doubt and
Yeah.
also allowing them to hang your trust. Don't just give it to them on a platter of
Don't
food.
just throw
So
it.
yeah,
Yeah. Don't just give it to them. Yeah.
I don't know if you've got
But
any
it's a
other
balance. It's a
suggestions.
balance, but you
Yeah.
can't withhold everything.
Yeah.
It's incremental. How do I? Yeah, I guess that's the way to
Yes.
say it.
yeah. I think
It's
that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And talking about forgiveness, the last character I'll talk about is Simon.
yeah, such a lovely boy.
Yeah, and how
I'm sorry, I talk about my characters as if they're human beings. I'm serious.
no,
Like,
it's very good, very good.
in my head.
Oh my god,
So I just said,
made it sound like such a swift boy.
Yeah,
I'm like,
this guy was wrestling. Oh, poor child. It's not his fault.
and
He
how
was a victim as well, is how I see
yeah,
it.
exactly. It was a
victim in all this.
victim. It
Yeah.
was a victim. It was an instrument,
Was an instrument, both. Yeah.
and then it became a beneficiary of forgiveness on one hand,
Yeah.
and just reminders of the dark things that he also did on the other hand. So
That's right.
forgiveness and unforgiveness, as it were. But I think that what the lesson for me from that character is how sometimes it's difficult to actually forgive, not because you really do not want to let go, but even if you want to let go, you look at the scars again and you
Yeah.
realize how much hurts that
It's not
person
that
actually
easy.
meted out to you.
Yeah. Yeah. People that say, oh, forgive them now. It's not easy. If you're the one that's been bruised in the whole matter, it's not as easy as that. And as much as I wanted to paint Dotino as this lovely character, I also wanted to be true to our emotions as human beings. She couldn't forgive him for what he did. And we had to go in her head to figure out how did she process this betrayal? How did she process this hurt? And of course, I tried to write it in a way that I would if I was Dotunu. I would be very upset. I'll try and get him back, which is what she did. When I was writing, I was like, oh my God. When I was like, she actually lied to get this boy in trouble. But let's be true. Let's be truthful as human beings. We could do this as human beings too, to get back at someone because they hurt us. We also want to hurt them back. So I tried to process these emotions through Dotunu's character and how she eventually came to forgive him. So
Yeah.
everybody has some people forgive easily. Shiwolu did that, but Dotunu couldn't for a minute. And they had to come to that point individually as well.
At the end of the day, forgiveness is powerful.
It is.
It's
It
not
frees
it's
you.
not something forgiveness is very powerful. I believe that everyone should come to the place where you see the power in forgiveness, not because you're not able to keep scores or keep tabs of what people have done, but how you understand that you actually wield a lot more power when you let go of something. And forgiveness sometimes is not instant,
Oh
but
yeah. It's a
so
process.
it's a process,
Yeah.
it's a journey. But the ultimate goal is to get to that point where it's no longer there. You're as free as a bird. Every time, the only example I have of forgiveness is Nelson Mandela, and how his remark when he spoke about all of the perpetrators of apartheid in South Africa, those is jailer and everything, and how very easily,
Yeah.
as much as we do not see the heart of a man, right, but we could see how graceful he later became.
Yeah.
And I believe
Yeah.
that is something that a lot of us can learn with human interactions. I tell
Too.
people that man is going to hurt you the same way we also hurt other people.
That's right.
In as much as we complain that people are not of their best behavior to us, we also know that we are not of our best
Yeah.
behaviors to other
It's
people.
two-sided. Yes,
So either
exactly.
ways, it's a cycle that we cannot control. The best that we can do is to live and let live, and try to stay in constant pursuit of happiness.
Well said.
Don't mind me. I sometimes like to philosophize. So
Anybody knows Shay already to be the philosopher, the one with the very hot take. We will just start with all this deep thoughts
Really?
in my mind. I'm like, oh God, calm me down, please.
You
Anyways,
said going
I've
to
had,
something else.
I've had such a wonderful
Segue to something
time.
else.
This has
That's
been
nice.
this has been a great
exciting.
session with you. Okay,
Thank you. I've had a wonderful time.
and thank you for
Yeah.
all of the answers that you gave to many of my probing questions
No
to
worries.
characters. As much as I don't like to give spoilers, I know that this conversation will also make a lot more people get curious to know,
Yeah.
to want to pick up Saru. And
Yeah.
for those listening, you can pick up Saru from any bookshop around. We always like to mention I can pick up from Ruby Nights. Currently, 4 locations in Nigeria, 2 in Lagos,
Oh,
2 in
nice.
Abuja, and any
Nice.
you can, if you are not in Nigeria, if you're in diaspora like Toby and Nike are, I'm sure that you find you can get
There are
order it on
copies on
Amazon.
Amazon, right? Like,
Yeah,
Amazon.
so you
Yes,
can
it's an
you
Amazon.
can order
Yeah.
it on Amazon, and they'll be delivered to your doorstep sooner than you think. But thank you very much, Nikki. I hope you had
Thank
such a good
you.
time as much as we did.
I did. It was really
And
laid back and
yeah.
fun.
the final
Yeah.
question is: so what next?
Final. I thought we were done. Let's go.
What
That was
next?
the
What's the
question.
next
When
book?
I will read it
So
next
what's the
from
next
you. What's new?
I have started working on my story now, and it's actually inspired from Iriti, the word in the story. And yes, I'm excited. I've started, and we will see where the journey takes us. Yes.
Amazing. That's really beautiful to
Yes.
see.
Okay,
We
no
can't
trouble.
wait to see and experience your next
Thank you.
work. And we
Thank you.
can't also thank you enough for making time to join us on this particular episode.
Thank you for inviting me. I really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
That's
Thank you
it,
very much
guys.
for
Thank you.
joining us.
Okay.